What's up, guys? It's Dan from Coin Bureau Trading. Today, we're going to talk about what comes next for the crypto market. Has Bitcoin topped? Is Bitcoin still going to top? Which indicators to watch? If this is the kind of content that you enjoy, then be sure to smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ping that notification bell. Before we get started, do keep in mind that nothing in this video is financial advice. It's just my personal analysis of the crypto market. Your analysis could be different, and if it is, that's awesome, because the more difference of opinion that we have, the better traders and the better investors we're all going to become. So I'm actually going to start off, guys, by reading off this research feed post I did for the Coin Bureau Club. It's actually a frequently asked question I've seen a lot in the comments of the videos on the channel here as well, because of many of you might know that I was expecting a Bitcoin to top in October, and some people actually think that Bitcoin did top in October. So we're going to go through all of that. So just let me start off with this post. So what do you think happens next? As October comes to a close, many have started asking me what I think comes next for the market. To quickly recap, I was dead set on a Q3 cycle top and then basically moved the goalpost to an October cycle top for Bitcoin and a November cycle top for altcoins. This begs the question of what my new thesis is, especially since I held and still hold the view that the end of this year will be bearish. The answer is that I'm no longer set on dates and starting to realize that it really depends on what happens with the DXY, aka the US dollar, and with Bitcoin dominance. If the DXY manages to fall from here, then this would basically increase global liquidity and cause everything to rally. More importantly, if the DXY manages to fall from here, then it will result in the classical altcoin rotation we've all been waiting for. Conversely, if the DXY or US dollar stays where it is, then we're likely to have a limited altcoin season. And if the DXY starts going higher, then there probably won't be much of an altcoin season and the bear market will probably start. Before you ask, I expect the DXY to fall as a result of a series of factors, namely a more dovish Fed and the US government shutdown ending, which is very likely to result in a DXY drop, and who knows, maybe this happened by the time you see this video. Regarding Bitcoin dominance, you can clearly see that historically Bitcoin would top when Bitcoin dominance would fall to the support level of its most recent structure. In this case, that's around 55%. So when Bitcoin dominance falls to 55%, chances are that's where the top for Bitcoin will be, regardless of the price. After that, there should be a drop to at least 45 to 49% in Bitcoin dominance, where most altcoins should start topping. Again, I have no idea when the DXY will drop or when Bitcoin dominance will hit 55% and go lower from there. As I've noted before, both the DXY and Bitcoin dominance have been on the brink of breaking down since July, but still haven't done it. And this is basically why I've been saying that there'd be altcoin season and everything since July, because Bitcoin dominance and the DXY were all flashing these signals for a very long time. Anyways, unless this time is different, it will happen eventually, meaning that eventually the DXY will get that second leg lower and Bitcoin dominance will fall to that 55% level, corresponding to a start of altcoin season and a Bitcoin cycle top. If you guys like that kind of content, then do check out the Coin Bureau Club. That's where we do deep dives into small cap altcoins every single week. Members get to vote on which altcoins we review. We have a research feed where I'm sharing those types of insights, and we have a team portfolio page where you can see which cryptos we hold and which cryptos we're considering buying, an exclusive deals page where you can find discounts on like crypto research platforms and stuff like that, and a members Discord where you can discuss the crypto markets with us. The link to all of that, the link to the Coin Bureau Club, is down in the description and in the comments. So let's take a closer look now, guys, at the DXY and Bitcoin dominance. So again, the DXY measures the strength of the US dollar, DXY lower basically equals everything else higher, and DXY higher equals everything else lower. As we can see, historically speaking, when the DXY would begin a medium-term downtrend that would correspond to a crypto rally led by Bitcoin, then we would have a couple of months of chop in the DXY, and then we would have a second leg lower corresponding to an altcoin season. And this box here, well, in this case, this is the last government shutdown, but the box you see here in 2017, the box you see here in 2020, and the box you see here in 2025, these are kind of these zones of chop where we're waiting for that second leg lower for altcoin season. So basically a drop down in the DXY down to around 96 or 95 in the next couple of weeks, hopefully, to confirm an altcoin season in this case. And again, if we zoom in here, guys, you can see that the DXY has basically been on the brink of another leg lower, well, technically since July, and it's just been chopping and chopping. And now, in the shorter term, or I guess in the last few weeks, it looks like the DXY has been rising. But if we zoom in here, guys, to shorter time frames, especially on the daily, you can see that the DXY is on the brink of breaking down here, and hopefully that breakdown has started by the time you guys see this video. If it has, then again, this would probably correspond with everything rallying, and especially altcoins. So hopefully by the time you guys see this video, this level will fall here on the DXY, and of course the next level to watch in that case would be somewhere around 98%, which is, or rather 98 as on the DXY. That would be the Bollinger Band moving average on the weekly, and if we do see the DXY kind of squeeze lower from that, then that would be extremely bullish and basically correspond to a massive altcoin season, similar to what we saw in previous cycles. And in this sense, guys, it's actually interesting to note, if we look at the DXY on the weekly, it does look kind of similar to 2017 in the sense that in 2017, the DXY also did temporarily break above the Bollinger Band moving average on the weekly. And I'm sure that back then it had everyone freaking out thinking it was over. And of course, what's interesting is that the DXY broke above the Bollinger Band moving average on the weekly also in October, but then basically going into November, the DXY started falling sharply. And then of course into December and January, that's when we had the altcoin season. And it looks like we could potentially see a similar scenario here with the DXY falling into November and then basically continuing lower into December, corresponding to an altcoin season. And again, the main thing, I guess the main takeaway here is that I honestly at this stage, because again, since July, I've been expecting the DXY to fall and it just hasn't done it, and it just keeps grinding sideways. And now again, on shorter term timeframes, it looks like it's going to continue lower. But the key point is that, at this stage, just persistently putting out dates and then it takes longer and longer. Of course, that's frustrating for everyone who's been following my analysis. But the fact of the matter is, and I'm clearly showing you guys, is that when the DXY gets that second leg lower, altcoin season starts. And unless this time is different, which I don't think it is, then we will be getting that second leg lower in the DXY, corresponding to an altcoin season sometime in the coming weeks. At this stage, I honestly don't know, because again, in July, it looked like the DXY was about to completely roll over with a nice bear flag on the weekly, and then it just bounced, and it's just been chopping now for like 3 or 4 months. So, I'm not going to say, okay, for sure it's going to be, whatever it is, November, for sure it's going to be December, because as you guys have probably noticed, trying to say like, oh, it's going to be this month or that month has not worked out so well so far. But the kind of silver lining there is that nothing in this is necessarily bearish yet. Nothing is kind of different. It's just taking longer than expected. And it's a similar story here, guys, with Bitcoin dominance. So this, again, I know there's a lot of debate here. It's really interesting, and I'm sure that there's already going to be a couple comments about like Ben Cowan saying that Bitcoin dominance is going to surge higher. I was actually watching his recent analysis of this, and his reasoning was basically that when we see this wick in Bitcoin dominance, in this case on the weekly or daily or whatever, eventually this wick gets filled, meaning that Bitcoin dominance will continue going higher and fill that wick. But the thing is, guys, that this only applies to wicks basically when you're in an uptrend in Bitcoin dominance, and arguably we are now in a downtrend in Bitcoin dominance ever since June. And what that would suggest is that this wick will not be filled the same way that the wicks back here in early 2021, those were not filled on the way down, because again, it was on a downtrend. Of course, the wicks on the way up, most of those were filled on the uptrend, but again, on the downtrend, those wicks don't get filled. And it's a kind of similar story here, although there weren't really as many wicks back in 2017. But anyways, guys, the point is that, again, like it's I guess a matter now of debate. Is like, okay, then where exactly are we in this Bitcoin dominance cycle, right? Like a lot of people will say, oh, well, we are somewhere in like the, let's say, late 2020 stage, meaning that Bitcoin dominance is going to rise into the end of the year, which again, that's certainly possible. I kind of, at this stage, I think it doesn't really matter. The key takeaway when it comes to figuring out where Bitcoin is going to top is just look at this level, this kind of key support level, in this case around 55%. You guys can see that back in 2020, when Bitcoin dominance fell below, I think it was around 58%. If you actually go back, that's exactly when Bitcoin first topped, was in early April 2021. And that's when Bitcoin dominance kind of lost the support level somewhere around 58, 57%. Similar story if we go back to 2017, when Bitcoin dominance lost the support level of somewhere around 51%, 50%. As soon as it lost that support, that happens to be when Bitcoin topped. It's because it's kind of counterintuitive. I think that there's this assumption out there that Bitcoin is going to top when Bitcoin dominance tops. But again, historically speaking, you can clearly see that's not the case. Bitcoin tops when Bitcoin dominance has already started falling and is starting to fall sharply. So if we are going to see a sharp drop here in Bitcoin dominance, of course, which is what I expect, again, that's certainly up for debate. But if we do get a drop in Bitcoin dominance in the next few weeks here, you need to be watching that 55% level, because as soon as that level is lost, that's probably going to correspond to a top in Bitcoin. And I guess to wrap things up, guys, I do want to address the possibility that Bitcoin has already topped. This is where things get pretty interesting. So there's a guy on X, a trader on X named Crypto Bullet. What's really funny is like his analysis is surprisingly similar to mine, to the extent that many people in the Coin Bureau Club think that like he's my alter ego or that I'm secretly him and vice versa. But what's I guess where he and I now differentiate when it comes to like October cycle top. Of course, he also expected an October cycle top, but he thinks that Bitcoin topped on October 6th. And again, I just don't see that, for the simple fact that if we look historically speaking, Bitcoin only tops when Bitcoin dominance falls to to the support level, in this case around 55%. And of course, we're still a way away from that. Crypto Bullets analysis here, he basically assumes like, okay, Bitcoin has topped on October 6th, and now we're going to get a lower high, and we're going to see basically Ethereum rally hard as Bitcoin paints this lower high the same way that it did in previous cycles, and he shows this very clearly here. Of course, there's a few things up for debate that he's basically analyzing here in terms of early 2021. A lot of people think that early 2021 was not the top, like, I mean, in terms of a technical perspective, they think it was more like later in 2021. There's a lot of debate about that, but the kind of key takeaway from this analysis, I would say, is that when Bitcoin tops, there's going to be roughly a month between the top for Bitcoin and the top for Ethereum and other altcoins. If you actually look historically, basically Bitcoin will top, let's say, in December, and then Ethereum and altcoins will top in January, or Bitcoin will top in I guess it was in this case in April, and then Ethereum and altcoins will top in May. What's really fascinating is if you look at the 2021 cycle top, though, everything kind of topped together in a similar time frame, which is pretty interesting and could, be circumstantial evidence that that second top was not necessarily, the actual top, if that makes any sense. But anyways, the key takeaway being is that, it is possible, I think, that Bitcoin topped earlier this month. That is definitely, or I guess now by the time you guys see this video, it's technically last month, but it is possible that Bitcoin topped in early October. I just think that's very unlikely because we haven't seen other triggers hit. There wasn't really euphoria. There wasn't like some bullish catalyst, right? It's missing a lot of ingredients that are corresponding to a top. But again, the key takeaway from this analysis and from anyone else who's saying that Bitcoin has topped in early October, the key takeaway is that it's actually correct that Ethereum and altcoins will top roughly 1 month after Bitcoin. So when you see Bitcoin hitting, falling, or like Bitcoin dominance falls 55%, Bitcoin's around, I don't know, let's say 144,000 or something like that, or and I know that's a target that many people have. Let's say Bitcoin's around 140,000. That probably means that it's the Bitcoin top. So then altcoins would top 1 month after that. So let's say hypothetically, Bitcoin dominance falls to 55% in mid-November, then that means that altcoins would top sometime in mid-December, if that makes any sense. And again, you can clearly check this by just watching Bitcoin dominance. When that falls down to 55%, that's probably the Bitcoin top, and I would argue that's probably regardless of the price. Anyways, guys, if you did make it this far and you did find that information helpful, be sure to smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, ping that notification bell, and I'll see you in the next one.